Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudite Nashtapraheshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtaki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 29, entitled Bhakti Yoga, text 22 onwards. Esha buddhimatam buddhir manisha cha manishinam yat satyam nirite neha marthya napnoti mamritam. This process is the supreme intelligence of the intelligent, means the Bhakti Yoga process, and the cleverness of the most clever. For by following it, one can, in this very life, make use of the temporary and unreal to achieve me, the eternal reality. So make use of temporary and unreal means everything in the material world is temporary and unreal. But we can use it in the service of the Lord to achieve Him. As described in this chapter, one who desires personal prestige in the Lord's service cannot be considered intelligent and clever. Similarly, one who is anxious to become a sophisticated transcendental philosopher is not the most intelligent. Nor is one who is expert in accumulating money. The Lord here states that the most intelligent and clever person is a devotee who offers his temporary, illusory material body and possessions to Him with love and without personal motivation. The devotee thus obtains the eternal absolute truth. In other words, real intelligence is to actually surrender to Lord Krishna without personal desire or duplicity. That is the Lord's opinion. And devotees are most intelligent and most clever, not in a wrong way, but they know how to use everything in the service of the Eshate abhihita Krishno brahmavadasya sangriha samasa vyasa vidhina devanam api durgama. Thus have I related to you, both in brief and in detail, a complete survey of the science of the absolute truth. Even for the demigods, this science is very difficult to comprehend. The word Devanam indicates those living beings in the mode of goodness, such as demigods, saints, and pious philosophers, but nevertheless cannot understand the absolute truth because they lack full surrender to the personality of God. Abhikshanastaste gatitam jnanam vispashta yuktimat etat vikyaya mucheta purusho nashta sanchaya. I have repeatedly spoken this knowledge to you with clear reasoning. Anyone who properly understands it will become free from all doubts and attain liberation. So similarly, even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, towards the end, in chapter, he says the same things. Anyone who hears this, or Sanjay says, anyone who hears this conversation will become liberated, and similar Shrutifal here also. Suviviktam tava prashnam maya tadapi dharye sanatanam brahma guhyam param brahma digacchati. Anyone who fixes his attention on these clear answers to your questions will attain to the eternal confidential goal of the Vedas, which is the supreme absolute truth. Param Brahma digacchati. So he fixes his attention and then follows it. Yaetanmam bhakteshu sampradyat supushkalam tasyaham brahmadayasya dadami atma manatmana. One who liberally disseminates this knowledge among my devotees is a bestower of the absolute truth. And to him I give my very own self. So even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the same thing, one who gives this knowledge to my devotees is very dear to me. So here also, one who liberally disseminates this knowledge among my devotees is a bestower of the absolute. And to him I give my very own self. Why? Because Krishna wants everybody to come back to his abode. And by following this bhakti yoga process, one becomes eligible to go back. So Krishna becomes very indebted to that person. That's why preachers are very, very dear to Krishna. Ya etat samdhiyet pavitram bharmam shuchi sapuyeta harmam gyan deepena darshayan. He who loudly recites the supreme knowledge, which is the most lucid and purifying, becomes purified day by day. For he reveals me to others with the lamp of transcendental knowledge. Ya etat shraddhya nityam avyagra shranuyan naraha mai bhaktim varam kurvan karma bhirna sa badhyate. Anyone who regularly listens to this knowledge with faith and attention, all the while engaging in my pure devotional service, will never become bound by the reactions of material work. Will never become bound. This is Krishna's words. Api uddhav tvaya brahma sakhe samavadharitam apite vigato moha shokaschasu manobhava. My dear friend Uddhav, have you now completely understood this transcendental knowledge? Are the confusion and lamentation that arose in your mind now dispelled? Shri Uddhav had been bewildered by considering manifestations of Lord Krishna's own potency to be separate from him. Uddhav's lamentation arose because he thought himself separated from Lord Krishna. Actually, Shri Uddhav is an eternally liberated soul, but the Lord placed him in bewilderment lamentation so that this supreme knowledge of the Uddhav Gita could be spoken. Lord Krishna's question here indicates that if Uddhav had not perfectly understood this knowledge, Lord Krishna would have explained the same thing again. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, since Shri Uddhav is an intimate friend of Lord Krishna, the Lord's question here was in a friendly, playful spirit. The Lord was well aware of Uddhav's complete enlightenment in Krishna consciousness. In Bhagavad Gita also, he says the same thing to Arjuna. Has all your doubts been dispelled now? And is there any other question? And Arjuna says, Nashtamoho, all my doubts are gone. All the attachments are gone. Netatveya dambhikaya nastikaya shataya cha ashru shushrona bhaktaya durvinitaya diyatam. You should not share this instruction with anyone who is hypocritical, atheistic, or dishonest, or with anyone who will not listen faithfully, who's not a devotee, or who is simply not humble. Well, I think we fall into these categories to a certain degree, but it's the mercy of Prabhupada. We've been given this knowledge, given these instructions. Eter dosher vihinaya brahmanyaya priyaya cha sadve shuchaya brivya bhakti syat sudra yoshitam. This knowledge should be taught to one who is free from these bad qualities, who is dedicated to the welfare of the Brahmins, and who is kindly disposed, saintly and pure. And if common workers and women are found to have devotion for the Supreme Lord, they are also to be accepted as qualified hearers. So only quality that is required is devotion for the Supreme Lord, not big scholarship, not birth in very, very high respectable family, not anything else, only devotion. And here it is a common worker like Shudras or women, even if they have, not just the Brahmins, if anybody who has devotion, they are to be accepted as qualified hearers. And one who hears, is definitely going to give it out to others. So he is definitely going to preach. So there is no restriction on who can preach and who cannot preach. Anybody can preach. Yehi Krishna Tattvaveta Sai Guru Haya. Those who know Krishna in truth, they can preach. They can become gurus. Netad Vigyaya Jigyasur Gyate Vyayam Avashishyate Pitva Piyusham Amritam Patavyam Navashishyate. When an inquisitive person comes to understand this knowledge, he has nothing further to know. After all, one who has drunk the most palatable nectar cannot remain thirsty. So this is the topmost knowledge, because then Krishna says there's nothing further to know. What else one wants to know? In Bhagavad Gita, he says the same thing. There's nothing further to be known. One who has this knowledge. So this knowledge means the knowledge of Bhakti Yoga. Then one does not need to know anything else. Just work on Bhakti. Jnane karmani yoge cha vartarayam dandadharane yavanartho nirlam tata tamaste aham chaturvidaham. Through analytical knowledge, ritualistic work, mystic yoga, mundane business, and political rule, people seek to advance in religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But because you are my devotee, whatever men can accomplish in these multifarious ways, you will very easily find within me. Within me means within Krishna's Bhakti Yoga. Lord Krishna is the basis of all that exists, and one who takes exclusive shelter of the Lord never suffers any loss whatsoever for his intelligent decision to surrender to Krishna. So never suffers any loss. And it depends on how much shelter, how much surrender we have done, how surrendered we are. Martyo yada tyakta samasta karma niveditatma vichikirshito me tadamre tattvam pratipadyamano mayatma bhuyaya chakalpataiva. A person who gives up all fruitive activities and offers himself entirely unto me, eagerly desiring to render service unto me, achieves liberation from birth and death, and is promoted to the status of sharing my own opulences. Atma Bhuyaya. There's not a loss, not a single moment loss or single penny's loss, single loss of any endeavor if we serve Krishna. Here Krishna himself is saying. Shri Shukvacha Seva Madarshita Yoga Margas Tadottama Shloka Vacho Nishamya Baddhanjali Priti Uprudda Kanto Na Kinchid Uche Ashru Pariplutaksha. Shukdev Goswami said, hearing these words spoken by Lord Krishna and having thus been shown the entire path of yoga, Uddhav folded his hands to offer obeisances, but his throat choked up with love and his eyes overflowed with tears, so he could say nothing. Vishtabhya chittam pranayava ghurnam dharyena rajan bahumanyamana kritanjali prahayadu praviram shirshana sprashanstat charanarvindam. Steadying his mind, which had become overwhelmed with love, Uddhav felt extremely grateful to Lord Krishna, the greatest hero of the Yadu dynasty. My dear King Parikshit, Uddhav bowed down to touch the Lord's lotus feet with his head and then spoke with folded hands. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the fear of separation from Lord Krishna was continually entering the mind of Sri Uddhav. And thus he tried to maintain his enthusiasm by remembering the Lord's greatest kindness upon him. He steadied his mind with feelings of gratitude towards the Lord. Shri Uddhava Vacha Vidravito moh mahanak andakaru yashito metav sannidhana vibhavaso kimno samip gasya shitam tamobhi prabhavanti ajadya. Shri Uddhav said, O unborn primeval Lord, although I had fallen into the great darkness of illusion, my ignorance has now been dispelled by your merciful association. Indeed, how can cold, darkness, and fear exert their power over one who has approached the brilliant sun? Although Shri Uddhav feared separation from the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Krishna, he now understands that in a fundamental sense, the Lord is everything. Krishna consciousness can never be threatened or diminished for one who has taken full shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Who has taken full shelter it can never be threatened because he can see Krishna everywhere. Even if he's away from the temple or he's away from Vrindavan, he can still see Krishna everywhere. So it can never be threatened. Pratyarpito me bhavatanukampina pratyaya vijnanamaya pradipa etva kritagyastav padamulam Konyam samiyacharanam tvadiyam. In return for my insignificant surrender, you have mercifully bestowed upon me, your servant, the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. Therefore, what devotee of yours who has any gratitude could ever give up your lotus feet and take shelter of another master? So nobody will give up Krishna. So in return for my insignificant surrender, this is his humility. It is he's eternally liberated soul. And he's saying, I am not surrendered. My insignificant surrender, but you have mercifully bestowed the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. So who could be more merciful than you? Vrikanaschit me sudridah snehpashu Dashara vrishni andhakavasatvateshu prasarita srishti vivriddhe tvaya swamayaya hi atma subodha hetina. The firmly blinding rope of my affection for the families of the Dasharas, Vrishnis, Andhaks and Satvatas, a rope you originally cast over me by your illusory energy for the purpose of developing your creation, is now cut off by the weapon of transcendental knowledge of the self. So although the members of the families mentioned in this verse are eternal associates of Lord Krishna and thus proper objects of affection, Shri Uddhava had regarded them as his personal relatives rather than simply as pure devotees of the Lord. Influenced by the Lord's illusory potency, Uddhava had desired the prosperity and victory of these dynasties. But now, by hearing Lord Krishna's instructions, he has again fixed his mind exclusively upon Lord Krishna, and thus he regards his so-called family members without any mundane conception as eternal servant of the Lord. So he's saying, you have cut off all my attachment to all of them. Although they all are devotees, but still, Uddhaji is showing us how to cut off our attachment by getting complete attachment for Krishna. Namostute mahayogin prapannam anushadhimam yatha tvacharanam bhoje rati syadan apayini. Obeisance is unto you, O greatest of yogis. Please instruct me, who am surrendered unto you, how I may have undeviating attachment to your lotus feet. Further is asking, how can I have undeviating attachment? Shri Bhagwan Vacha. Gacchodhav maya dishto badaryakyam mamashramam tatra mad pada tirthode snanopsparshane shuchihi ikshayalak nandaya viduta shesha kalmasha vasano valkalanyanga vanya bhuk sukhni spriha titikshur dvandva matranam sushila samyatendriya shanta samahita dhiya jnana vijnana samyataha matto anushikšitam yatte viviktam anubhavayan maya veshitavak vakchito madharma nirato bhava ativrajya gatistisro mameshyasi tatah param. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Uddhav, take my order and go to my ashram called Badrika. Purify yourself by both touching and also bathing in the holy waters there, which have emanated from my lotus feet. Rid yourself of all sinful reactions with the sight of the sacred Alaknanda river. Dress yourself in bark and eat whatever is naturally available in the forest. Thus you should remain content and free from desire, tolerant of all dualities, good-natured, self-controlled, peaceful, and endowed with transcendental knowledge and realization. With fixed attention, meditate constantly upon these instructions I've imparted to you and assimilate their essence. Fix your words and thoughts upon me and always endeavor to increase your realization of my transcendental qualities. In this way, you will cross beyond the destinations of the three modes of nature and finally come back to me. And that is, so Uddhavji asks, how can I have undeviating attachment to your lotus feet? So Krishna is giving him the instructions. So Krishna asked him to go to Badrika Ashram and follow this process. And of course, for us, it's not possible. Badrika Ashram, very, very cold. We just go there for a trip, but not to live there. It's not easy. So for us, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been very merciful and Prabhupada has been more merciful. Just wherever you are, chant. Grihe thaku, vane thaku, sada hari bale thaku. And whether you are at home or in the forest, just chant the holy names. Shri Shukavacha, yasa eva mukto hari medha sodhava, pradakshinam tam parisritya padev, shiro nidhaya shru kala bhiradra dhira, nyashin chad dvandva paro api apakrame. Shukdev Goswami said, thus addressed by Lord Krishna, whose intelligence destroys all the suffering of material life. Shri Uddhav circumambulated the Lord and then fell down, placing his head upon the Lord's feet. Although Uddhav was free from the influence of all material dualities, his heart was breaking, and at this time of departure, he drenched the Lord's lotus feet with his tears. Because he knew Lord is going to wind up his pastimes and he's not going to see the Lord again, not in the material world again. Suddhustyaj sneh viyog kataro nashaknu vanstam parihatu matur krichram yayo murdhani bhartri paduke bibhren namaskritya yayo punah punah. Greatly fearing separation from him for whom he felt such indestructible affection, Uddhav was distraught and he could not give up the Lord's company. Finally, feeling great pain, he bowed down to the Lord again and again, placed the slippers of his master upon his head, and departed. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 4th chapter, 5th verse, while Uddhav was en route to Badrika Ashram, he heard about the Lord's journey to Prabhas. Turning back and following Lord Krishna from behind, he saw the Lord alone just after the withdrawal of the Yadu dynasty. After being again mercifully instructed by the personality of Godhead along with Maitreya, who had just arrived, Uddhav felt his knowledge of the truth reawaken, and then by the order of the Lord, he went on his way. Tatastam antar hridi sannivesh gato mahabhagavato vishalam yathopadishtam jagadeka bandhuna tapa samasthaya harer gatam. Thereupon, placing the Lord deeply within his heart, the great devotee Uddhav went to Badrika Ashram. By engaging there in austerities, he attained to the Lord's personal abode, which had been described to him by the only friend of the universe, Lord Krishna himself. Shri Uddhav returned to Dwarka in the spiritual sky, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because his mood of relationship with Krishna is in Dwarka mood, not in Vrindavan mood. Ya etadananda samudra sambhritam jnanamritam bhagvataya bhashitam krishnena yogeshwara sevitankrina satshridya sevya jagad vimuchyate. Thus Lord Krishna, whose lotus feet are served by all great yoga masters, spoke to his devotee this nectarian knowledge, which comprises the entire ocean of spiritual bliss. Anyone within this universe who receives this narration with great faith is assured of liberation. So just we have to hear it with great faith, and then liberation is guaranteed. Amazing. Bhava bhayam apahantum jnana vijnana saram nigam karitu upjahve bhringavad veda saram amritam udadhitaschapyayad bhritya vargan purusham rishabham madhyam krishna sangyam nato asmi. I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original and greatest of all beings, Lord Shri Krishna. He is the author of the Vedas, and just to destroy his devotees' fear of material existence, like a bee, he has collected this nectarian essence of all knowledge and self-realization. Thus he has awarded to his many devotees this nectar from the ocean of bliss, and by his mercy they have drunk it. So just as a bee extracts nectar from a flower without harming the flower, Lord Shri Krishna extracts the essence of all Vedic knowledge without disturbing the elaborate system of Vedic advancement, which is Varnashram system. But he extracts the essence and gives it to his devotees. In other words, Lord Shri Krishna establishes himself as a goal of Vedic knowledge without destroying preliminary inferior processes that may be applicable to grossly materialistic men. Sri Shukdev Goswami thus concludes by offering his obeisances to the spiritual master of the entire universe, Lord Shri Krishna. And he said, thus he has awarded to his many devotees this nectar from the ocean of bliss, and by his mercy they have drunk it. This nectar is not available anywhere else. Only Srimad Bhagavatam, obviously, it's full of this nectar. There's nothing but this nectar, which is devotional service. And how he should do it from the ocean of bliss. We are looking for bliss, happiness in this material world. But what do we get? Just few drops here and there. And mostly it's the misery that comes with it. But here is an ocean of bliss. And he wants us to drink it. Just take it, drink it, enjoy it. But our situation is completely different. So thus ends the purport to 11th canto, 29th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Bhakti Yoga. So if you don't have any questions, we can start the next chapter. Okay, chapter 30th, the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty. So we are coming towards the end of Yadu dynasty, and Krishna is going to wind up his pastimes, and then Kali Yuga will start. Okay, text 1. Shri Raju Vacha Tato Mahabhagvat Uddhave Nirgate Vanam Dwarvatyam Kim Akarot Bhagwan Bhuta Bhavana. King Parikshit said, after the great devotee Uddhav left for the forest, what did the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the protector of all living beings, do in the city of Dwarka? Parikshit Maharaj now inquires from Shukdev Goswami about the topic of chapter 1 of this canto, namely the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty and Lord Krishna's return to the spiritual sky. Because Lord Krishna was playing the part of an ordinary member of the Yadu dynasty, he appeared to react to the curse of the Brahmins by giving up his earthly pastimes. Lord Krishna cannot actually be cursed by anyone. Narad Muni and the other sages who curse the Yadu dynasty are eternal devotees of Lord Krishna and could hardly curse him. Therefore, in giving up his pastimes and leaving the earth with the Yadu dynasty, Lord Krishna demonstrated his internal potency and personal will, since No one can challenge the supreme potency of the personality of Godhead. So the curse was, if you remember, when these boys uh, headed by Samba, they all went to sages and they dressed up the boy as a lady, as a pregnant lady. They asked the sages, so what do you think is going to be born from her, boy or a girl? And they said, whatever comes out is going to be the cause of the annihilation of your whole dynasty. Of course, devotees cannot curse. It's all pastimes of the Lord. He wanted to wind up his pastimes and take back his Yadu dynasty with him. Or before he leaves, he wanted to send the Yadus back. Brahma Shapopa Samsrishte Swakule Yadav Rishabha Preyasim Sarva Netranam Tanumsa Kathamatyajat. After his own dynasty met destruction from the curse of the Brahmins, how could the best of the Yadus give up his body, the dearmost object of all eyes? In relation to this verse, Srila Jiva Goswami explains that the personality of Godhead never gives up his spiritual body, which is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. The word Katham therefore indicates how is it possible, meaning it's not actually possible for Lord Krishna to give up his eternal form, which is Preyasim Sarva Netrana, the most attractive object of pleasure for the eyes and all other senses. And there are some messages going around on Facebook and WhatsApp. Of course, we don't learn from them, but it's ridiculous. They say, oh, when Krishna left his body in Dwarka, in Prabhashetra, then that body was kept and that body went into Lord Jagannath. No, Lord Jagannath is also Krishna and he also has a transcendental body. Although it looks like wood to us or other herbs that they use to make Lord Jagannath's body. And in his Nabhi, they keep this Shaligram Shila. But that didn't come from Krishna in Prabhashetra. What he left over there was the Virat Rupa of universal, which is material anyway. He never has this Virat Rupa as his body. This was just to let people understand how great he is. But what he left was this Virat Rupa. Krishna is non-different from his body. He cannot leave his body. No, he doesn't leave his body. Pratyakrashtum nayanam abala yatra lagnam na sheku karnavishtam na sarati tato yat satam atma lagnam yat shriva vacham janayati ratim kim nu manam kavinam drishtva jishnor yudhi rathgatam tyatcha tatasamyamiyu. Once their eyes were fixed upon his transcendental form, women were unable to withdraw them. And once that form had entered the ears of the sages and become fixed in their hearts, it would never depart. What to speak of acquiring fame, the great poets who described the beauty of the Lord's form would have their words invested with transcendently pleasing attraction. And by seeing that form on Arjuna's chariot, all the warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained the liberation of gaining a spiritual body similar to the Lord's. So by seeing that form, if people can get liberated, so how can he leave that form? No way, because it's all transcendental. Transcendental liberated personalities such as the gopis of Vrindavan and Rukmini, the original goddess of fortune, were constantly meditating on the Lord's spiritual body. Great liberated sages, Satam, having heard about Lord Krishna's body, could not take it out of their hearts. The Lord's bodily beauty expanded the love and poetic output of great liberated poets. And simply by seeing Lord Krishna's body, the warriors at Kurukshetra achieved spiritual liberation with an eternal body similar to the Lord's. So warriors at Kurukshetra, everybody, even if they were on Pandava's side or Kaurav's side, because Krishna was there when they were leaving their bodies. They all went back to spiritual world. Even the animals who died over there. Therefore, it is impossible to imagine Lord Krishna's eternal form of bliss to be in any way material. Those who imagine that Lord Krishna gave up his eternal form are certainly bewildered by the Lord's illusory energy, by Lord's Maya. Shri Rishiruvacha, Divi Bhuvi Antarakshecha, Mahotapatan, Samuthitan, Drishtva so Dharmayam, Krishna Praha Yadunitam. Shukdev Goswami said, having observed many disturbing signs in the sky, on the earth, and in outer space, Lord Krishna addressed the Yadus assembled in Sudharma Council Hall as follows. So this was before the Yadus went to Prabhashetra. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the inauspicious sign in the sky was the appearance of a halo around the sun. On the earth, there were small earthquakes, and in the outer space, there was an unnatural redness on the horizon. These and other similar omens were impossible to counteract because they were personally arranged by Lord Krishna. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Ete Ghora Mahotapata, Dvarvatyam Yamaketavaha, Muhurtam api nasteyam atra no yadu pungavaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O leaders of the Yadu dynasty, please note all these terrible omens that have appeared in Dwarka, just like the flags of death. We should not remain here a moment longer. He would have sent them out without even the omens, but this is just for his pastimes. He wasn't to make everything perfect. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given a great amount of evidence from the Vedic literatures proving that the human-like form of the personality of Godhead and his holy name, abode, paraphernalia, and associates are all eternal, spiritual manifestations without any tinge of material contamination. In this regard, the Acharyas further explained that because the living entities must suffer the reactions to their sinful activities, the Lord arranges for them to be punished during the Kali Yuga. In other words, it's not Lord Krishna's desire that conditioned souls be sinful and suffer. But since they are already sinful, the Lord creates an appropriate age during which they can experience the bitter fruits of irreligiosity. So it's not that Krishna wanted Kali Yuga to be here, but it is because of our sins that we have committed and sinful nature that we have. He creates this age so that we learn our lesson, but still we do. Since Lord Krishna personally establishes religious principles in his various appearances in this material world, at the end of Dwapar Yuga, religion on earth was overwhelmingly irreligion, or at the end of Dwapar, religion on the earth was overwhelmingly powerful. All the significant demons had been killed. The great sages, saints, and devotees had been greatly encouraged, enlightened, and fortified, and there was little scope for irreligion. And Lord Krishna ascended to the spiritual sky in his spiritual body before the eyes of the world. It would have been very difficult for Kali Yuga to flourish. Lord Krishna left the world in exactly that way during his appearance as Ramchandra, and hundreds of thousands of years later, hundreds of millions of pious persons still discuss this wonderful pastime of the Lord. To pave the way for Kali Yuga, however, Krishna left this world in a way that puzzles those who are not his staunch devotees. So Lord Ramchandra also, he left this world. How? He just went to Saryu and disappeared from there. And all the Ayodhyavasis who followed him, they went to river Saryu and then they just went back. So those who don't have faith, they get puzzled. The eternal form of the Lord is described throughout Vedic literature, and his eternal form constitutes the highest understanding of the absolute truth, according to all great acharyas, including Shankaracharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yet, although Lord Krishna's eternal spiritual form is the realized fact by advanced devotees, For those who are weak in Krishna consciousness, the inconceivable pastimes and plan of the Lord are sometimes hard to appreciate properly. Just not just hard to appreciate, even to understand his pastimes. It's just impossible. Striya balascha vriddhascha shankhodharam vrijant vipah vayam prabhasam yasyamo yatra pratyak saraswati. The women, children, old men should leave this city and go to Shankhodhara. We shall go to Prabhashetra, where the river Saraswati flows towards the west. The word Vayam here refers to able-bodied male members of the Yadu dynasty, because they are going to fight. Women, children, and old men, they were not going to get into this fighting business. Tatrabhichya shuchaya uposha susamahita devata puji shyama snapnapalepnar harane. There we should bathe for purification, fast, and fix our minds in meditation. We should then worship the demigods by bathing their images, anointing them with sandalwood pulp, and presenting them with various offerings. Brahmanastu mahabhagan kritsaswastyan yana vayam go bhuhirana vasubhir gajashwar rath veshma bhi. After performing the expiatory rituals with the help of greatly fortunate Brahmins, we will worship those Brahmins by offering them cows, land, gold, clothing, elephants, horses, chariots, and dwelling places. So Brahmins should be given charity if they help in any way, in any puja or anything. They should be given charity. Vidhiresha hi arishtaghno mangalayanam uttamam devadvij gavam puja bhuteshu paramam bhava. This is indeed the appropriate process for counteracting our imminent adversity, and it is sure to bring about the highest good fortune. Such worship of the demigods, Brahmins, and cows can earn the highest birth for all living entities. Iti sarve samakaranya yadu vriddha madudvisha tatheti nobher utpirya prabhasam prayayu ratha. Having heard these words from Lord Krishna, the enemy of Madhu, the elders of Yadu dynasty, gave their assent, saying, so be it. After crossing over the ocean in boats, they proceeded on chariots to Prabhas. Tasmin bhagvatadishtam yadu devena yadava chakru paramaya bhaktya sarva shreyo brahmahitam. There, with great devotion, the Yadavas performed the religious ceremonies according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their personal Lord. They also performed various other auspicious rituals. Hare Krishna. Somebody's mic got unmuted. Tatastasmin mahapanam vapur mayarayakam madhu dishta bibhranshta vidyadhyo yadravyer bhrashyate matihi. Then their intelligence covered by providence, they liberally indulge in drinking the sweet Maraya beverage, which can completely intoxicate the mind. The word Dishta here indicates the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the first chapter of this canto, the curse upon the Yadu dynasty, this incident is elaborately explained. I guess we can stop here and take up this rest of the chapter tomorrow. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Prabhuji, I was reading the other day that there are some 80,000, more than that, widows who sing and chant in Vrindavan. And they are there primarily because nobody in their family wants them. In a way,
I won't put it that way. See, one cannot enter Vrindavan just like that and be there just like that because families don't want, so they let go. So maybe families don't want, but it is Krishna's arrangement that they come to Vrindavan and leave their bodies over there.
So in a way, they are dear to Krishna, and that's why they are there.
Yeah.
Even if their families have basically disbandoned them.
Yeah.
So they are even better off than us.
Oh yeah, oh definitely. They are in Vrindavan. What? Even at Radhakund, you will see many widows over there. But they are the best place one can imagine. Best of the places.
Mm.
See, suffering is there regardless, wherever we are. Suffering will be there. In America, isn't there suffering? We all are suffering.
Oh, there's a lot of suffering here. In fact, there's more suffering here than.
Yeah. So over there, Krishna takes care of everybody's whatever prasadam they're gonna get. They do get everything prasad. Of course, not
Correct.
luxury, not the luxury they will get, obviously. But that's not, they're there for anyway, for the luxurious life. They're there for, and prasadam is taken care of, clothes are taken care of, some money they get. But they leave the body in Vrindavan. That's the best thing. No more birth again. If you leave the body in Braj, anywhere in Braj. So that's the best thing that can happen to them.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, when Sudama, Brahmin Sudama visited Dwarka, it was a surprise visit, right? Without any information to Lord Krishna. And then we reached to Dwarka Palace. Is that true or not? Whether Dwarpal has stopped him for his identity to proven, like who is he, so that they can go inside and tell Krishna about it.
See, I don't know the details. I know whatever is in Bhagavatam. In Bhagavatam, it doesn't say he was stopped. Maybe some of the Puran has in detail. I don't know.
Actually, I've taken this quote from Amog Leela Prabhu's video, where he stated people sing that song, Are Dwarapalo Kanaiya se keh do, dar pe Sudama garib aa gaya hai. So,
yeah, that bhajan is there. The song is there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have to do some research on it if you want me to.
Please, Prabhuji.
Okay, sure. I'll do that.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mata. Thank you, Prabhuji. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.